For every great gimmick, there's probably 10 worse ones that follows. Who can forget Rosie, the superhero in training, Nails, Seven, the Yeti, Repo Man, Shockmaster, and many, many more. Most of the biggest names in wrestling history didn't reach the top with a ridiculous gimmick. They usually had to rise above it. This list takes a look at the best gimmicks ever seen in WWE. So with that being said, I'm KB the Mark from WBPTV, and this is the best WWE gimmicks of all time. Now, without further ado, let's cue that intro. Number 15, Mohamed Hassan. It could have been an all-time great gimmick, but WWE showed no restraint and went too far. Mark Copani, the man who played Hassan, isn't even from the Middle East. He's Italian. Somehow, he still played the character on TV perfectly. He was able to draw some unbelievable heat from the crowds every time his entrance music played and every time he opened his mouth. The fans' reaction would get louder than ever. There was speculation that Hassan was on his way to defeating Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship when WWE tastelessly had a group of terrorists carry Daivari out of the arena only one day after the London bombing. WWE had filmed the show before that happened, but there's still no excuse for taking the act that far. Mohamed Hassan and Daivari were sent down to developmental to change their acts. Mohamed Hassan could have potentially been a main eventer for years, but WWE proved once again that they're far behind the times when it comes to being politically correct. Number 14, Curt Henning, Mr. Perfect. A wrestling urban legend claimed that Terry Taylor was offered the choice of being the Red Rooster or Mr. Perfect for a gimmick. Taylor supposedly chose Rooster, Henning was given Perfect, and the rest is history. Mr. Perfect excelled at everything. It didn't matter if it was baseball, basketball, or bowling. He was simply the best. Mr. Perfect could have been an all-star in any sport, but he came to the WWF, now the WWE, to show off his skills. While he had a great run in the AWA, it was Henning's cocky Mr. Perfect persona in the WWF that truly made him worthy of the Hall of Fame. Number 13, Matt Hardy, version 1.0. For years, Matt Hardy was living in his brother's shadow, but when he landed the right gimmick, he became the more entertaining TV character and came into his own. Enter Matt Hardy, version 1.0. Hardy began promoting his life philosophies to the audience known as Mattitudes. He even picked up some followers in the form of Shannon Moore and Crash Holly, who were called MFers. Among the highlights of the gimmick was the great ring entrance. The music fit him nicely, but the computer screen graphic and matte facts put it over the top. Unfortunately, this was probably his best singles run in his WWE career. Number 12, Ravishing Rick Rude. Rude is often one of the first names mentioned when the topic of greatest wrestlers never to hold a world title comes up. He had the talent, the promo ability, and the looks, but just never reached the top. Plenty of wrestlers over the years have talked about how attractive they are, but with Rude, you believed he meant what he said. He could steal your girlfriend in a second if he wanted to. Rude was so arrogant, you couldn't wait to see him get beat up. He'd often have his opponent's faces airbrushed onto his tights, or in Jake Roberts' case, his real-life wife. Though he'd often cross the line, he was always entertaining, and no one was better at being full of himself more than the Ravishing. Number 11, Roman Reigns, the Tribal Chief. Love him or hate him, Roman Reigns is the face of this generation. But as inspirational as he is, no one can deny the fact that he is a dull babyface, but has proven to be a very good heel since his SummerSlam return. Since that return, Reigns has aligned himself with Paul Heyman and adopted the Tribal Chief moniker in honor of his Samoan family. And this new Roman has already given fans a pair of personal and surprisingly brutal matches between himself and his cousin, Jey Uso. This new Roman may be a bad guy, but he masked it well with a sense of humor. Number 10, The Godfather. Whoever would have guessed that Papa Shango would have a second career as a pimp? Much like Brodus Clay, the Godfather's act was all about the pimp. Yes, the gimmick was pretty offensive, having a pimp play a good guy on the television show, but for its time, it worked. He was by no means a great worker, but he didn't need to be. He had his signature spots, most notably the whole train, and that was great for a mid-card filler on any show. Pimping may not be easy, but the Godfather sure looked like he was having fun. Number 9, The Ultimate Warrior. Fans would rejoice when they heard his music play and saw the Ultimate Warrior sprinting down to the ring. He was larger than life and over the top, and for the time, it was something very different. When he would shake the ring ropes, the crowd was guaranteed to go wild, and even though his wrestling wasn't at the level of someone such as a Ricky Steamboat, his larger-than-life personality would carry him through his matches, and the way he ended his career with his sad, untimely death was strangely poetic and one of the most emotional moments in wrestling history. Number 8, Goldust. He was the son of Dusty Rhodes, one of the biggest draws in the history of professional wrestling, but Dustin Rhodes struggled to carve out his own path. Somehow, he found his calling when he slapped on a gold wig, applied face paint, put on a bodysuit, and called himself Goldust. You could say that Goldust was dark, mysterious, and a tad perverted. The character was also ahead of his time. Along with Marlena, he would stalk and occasionally try to seduce his opponents. Not surprisingly, the other wrestlers didn't seem too interested. Unfortunately, the character was played for laughs later in his career. Goldust was good in the role, but there was so much more potential for the character. Number 7, Mick Foley, Mankind. Mankind was one of WWE's greatest ever creations. Through the genius portrayal that Mick Foley gave, this monstrous and demented man somehow won the hearts of the WWE fans, putting his body on the line. Mankind suffered punishment like no other. His unique promos allowed him to stand out from the rest of the locker room. Mankind wasn't just a strange and mysterious character. He was also hilarious, lighthearted comedic relief who could have fans in tears of laughter. His work with The Rock as the Rock and Sock Connection will go down as one of the most entertaining tag teams in history, showing the brilliant range that this character had. Number 6, Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. The $1 Million Man's gimmick was simple, but a classic. Ted DiBiase was richer than you, and he would flaunt his wealth every chance he had. Who hasn't wanted to smack around a famous, rich playboy who isn't afraid to show off his money? Along with his bodyguard, Virgil, the two were a thorn in every side of every top babyface in the company. DiBiase proved that every man had his price, as he once even bought the WWF title from Andre the Giant and declared himself champion. The $1 Million Man gimmick was so good that WWE keeps on using it. Number 5, Razor Ramon. Scott Hall doesn't look Cuban, he doesn't sound Cuban, but somehow he was able to make this act work. Ramon was all Scott Hall's idea. Before debuting, he asked Vince McMahon if he'd ever seen Scarface. Vince hadn't, so Hall gave him an impression and the boss was sold. As good as the Razor Ramon character was, it was still nothing compared to Scott Hall just being himself in WCW. Number 4, The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt's gimmick was one of the more memorable ones in the past 10 years, but unfortunately, WWE gave him too many feuds that meant nothing. Repackaged as the horrifying Fiend, Wyatt is now built as a monster with an alter ego. And between these two gimmicks, he deserves to go down as one of the best in the acting category of wrestling. Number 3, Hollywood, Hulk Hogan. Few could ever have imagined Hulk Hogan without the yellow and the red, portraying the American hero that the fans would adore, yet that is exactly what he did when he became Hollywood, Hulk Hogan. Never before has a wrestler changed his character so dramatically with such fantastic results, and they may never will. but that just shows how good this gimmick was. Hogan's run with the NWO was one of the greatest in his storied career, as the group changed the business for good with Hogan's arrogant new persona at the heart of it. Number 2, Kane. Glenn Jacobs was no stranger to some bad gimmicks. He spent time as a dentist, a Christmas creature, and fake diesel. It wasn't until he became The Undertaker's long-lost brother that Glenn Jacobs finally caught fire. Upon his debut, Kane was absolutely dominant. He was one of the baddest men in all of wrestling and a big player in the Monday Night Wars. Over the years, he's gone back and forth from comedy to monster multiple times, and somehow it has worked. Number 1, the Phenom, The Undertaker. Not only is it the scariest gimmick ever, it's also the best. Who could possibly have imagined that the gimmick of an Undertaker would last for over 20 years? But somehow, Mark Calloway made it work. It could have easily been a giant flop. Instead, it's been an enduring character that successfully transitioned from a cartoonish era in the WWF right into the Attitude Era and back again. The Undertaker remained consistently popular over the years. There's a reason it received the Wrestling Observer Newsletter's Best Gimmick Award 5 years in a row. Do you agree with our list? Maybe you have someone you want to add. Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And until then, I'll see you on the next one.
I started with nothing and came out of king. I've been the one that's been ballin' for rings. It's been me and my team and we chasing the green. My team be the shit, we ain't ballin' for free. My team be the shit, we ain't ballin' for free.